Coming to you live from a garage in Gainesville, Florida, like two muertos de hambres, it's El Cuban Dudes Show with Andy and Abel. From the 305 to the 352, from Miami to Gainesville to Orlando to Tallahassee to Jacksonville and beyond. It's time for El Cuban Dudes Show of Florida. Dale! Our guest today is veteran Cuban-American actor who has starred in such hits as Christmas with the Cranks, Dirty Dancing Havana Nights, CSI Miami, and Las Vegas. He's also starred in various soaps such as One Life to Live, Morelia, and Maria Belén. He's now starring in Rick Najera's Sweet 15, Quinceañera.
Dale, that sounds cool.
An interactive experience where you're literally a part of the party. Pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Find tickets for Sweet 15 Quinceañera at sweet15show.com. That's Sweet 15 as in 15show.com. Let's welcome to El Cuban Dudes Show actor Rene Lavan. Rene.
What's up, fellas? Here having the cafecito because we can't be on the air without having the Cuban cafecito from Miami.
For sure, brother, for sure. Can't function without it, man. Look at you, man. You look great, man. How's everything going on in South Florida?
It's going good, man. It feels good to be back home and away from the crazy LA West Coast madness. And I've been back for a few years, and I think I foresaw what was happening in LA, and I said, let me head back to the roots. And then all of a sudden, Miami has risen to the market that he has risen. So I love being down here. Good seeing you guys, Cuban dudes, brothers.
Hey,
on the show, Papa.
We're blessed, honestly, for you to have accepted our interview request. So we're very happy that you're here with us, man. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, Rene.
Dale, familia. Let's get to it.
Rene, well, I think you're a brave man for being in South Florida, and just the traffic and everything that goes on down there. But you mentioned you came from LA, so it's not too foreign to you.
It's not too foreign. Look, the main difference is, for example, getting here today to be with you guys. I wanted to be here at my dad's house, have a cafecito, be close to the theater because we have rehearsal. We're opening this week, so I wanted to be close. I live in Broward County. I live in Dania Beach, a little bit further away from the madness, but it's still the madness. The difference between the 405 traffic in LA and here, with the exception of O.J. Simpson case, today, I-95, there was a dude that was being chased, stopped right in the middle of 95 South and the Golden Glades, the most traffic intersection in all of Florida, and had a 3-hour police standoff, 95 shut down, because this dude didn't know, he got caught robbing and then he was threatening to hurt himself. I mean, no laughing matter, but esa locura nada más pasa aquí en South Florida, bro.
Yeah,
¿Qué te pasa? Salte de la carretera porque tienes que hacerlo en el medio. I know you're having a bad day, but you have to ruin all of our days as well.
Sí.
Casi no llego aquí para estar con los Cuban dudes.
Sí, mátate en tu casa, bro, que we gotta get to work.
Por favor.
Gotta keep it spicy, baby. Oye, Rene, and talking about being brave, man, I want to start off the show and our interview talking to you a little bit going back in a time machine, right? Going back to the past a little bit of Rene. I want to talk about your coming from Cuba and everything that went on with that, arriving to the United States of America. I read an article yesterday doing some research about you where you guys, you came through in Marielito, right? You were a Marielito, you came through in Mariel. And something that stood out was the one part in the article where you left your grandmother behind and your dad not being able to say goodbye to your grandma. Tell me a little bit about that, man. Kind of just the motions of that whole thing, just the reality of leaving Cuba and coming to Miami in such a way.
Man, I'm glad you asked me about that because it's one of those things that I can't tell you, what I did on my last movie set or on the last TV show, or even sometimes who I worked with. And then there's such vivid memories that connect us to Cuba, whether you were born there, whether you were born here, whether it is a common thread that we all share. That is just something to be in awe about. Yesterday I was talking to my cousin who recently arrived. He finally got his visa. We grew up together as kids. I hadn't seen him in, I'm dating myself, for 40 years. And he tells me that things in Cuba are worse than they were 6 months ago when he had. But I've been hearing this for 40 at least, or 50 of my adult life years, that every 6 months things are getting. What is the worst that it could get? I mean, when does it become hell? So for me as a kid, it was really interesting because where I grew up outside of Artemisa, Cuba, which is a province now. It used to be Pinar del Rio, and my school was in a remote area, and it only went to um, kindergarten to fourth grade. So fifth and sixth grade, I had to go to military school. I had to go. I would arrive at the military school on Sunday nights, and my parents would pick me up on Friday morning. And we cropped the fields. We trained military. I knew how to put an AK-47 together at 11. My 17-year-old twin boys don't know how to freaking turn on an iPad. Well, that they might know how to do, but they don't know anything else. So it's just such a weird upbringing. And I remember, to go back to the point where we started with this, is I remember one day I was, and I again, you had to do physical labor, crop the fields, to teach you the power of work and honest days, hard work, really to produce for the revolution, of course, because we cropped tomatoes that were sold and we cropped things. But I remember vividly one day my parents showed up and they said, "No, something's wrong with your brother. We have to go to, with your grandmother, we have to go to the hospital, and we have to, because they couldn't tell in 1980 when you left Cuba. It was, they would do all kinds of protests. They would call you all kinds of things, throw things at you. Today they're, bring us stuff. Back then they were throwing those things. But
telling you guys Gusano,
all that kind of stuff. So, but once they had me in the cab, because I would have never, I'm never leaving Cuba. Even at that age, you should already start to get brainwashed with that doctrine. And I was already fifth and sixth grade, 2 years in a military school. God knows what they implanted in my head back then. So once we were in the cab, they said, "No, listen, this is the real truth. We're leaving the country." And imagine, as an 11-year-old boy, I was like petrified. I didn't know. And as we drove off, my school was in between these two cities, at Temisa and Guanajay. And it was imagine the name of this school. It doesn't no longer exist. It was called Futuros Comunistas. So imagine what my future would have held if my parents wouldn't have had the vision. And my aunt, who lived here, who chartered a boat, because, as you know, the Marielito migration, it was 125,000 of us. 100,000 of us were legal immigrants with papers. Our family here sponsored us, were responsible for us financially. We weren't supposed to be a burden to any. But then Castro had the brilliant idea of putting all these prisoners and mental patients and people who just were against him, and that was the 25,000. So it was 125,000. That 25,000 is where that great documentary about Cuba history, Scarface, is right. That really encompasses what my immigration.
Rene, but you were 11 years old, right? Do you remember a lot about the boat ride? Is there things that are still very fresh in your mind?
And I remember, the things. If you said something in school, one time I saw in a news something "huelga de hambre," and I said it joking around as a kid. They called my parents in. It was like we thought we were going to the firing squad because a kid, an 11-year-old, 10-year-old kid said hunger strike. So the doctrine was ever. So as we were writing on that, and I know I'm a Cuban, I go everywhere with my stories, but I remember that we had to go through Artemisa to finally get to Mariel, where the port was, where the boats were going out of. And my grandmother always used to sit in the same rocking chair and under an almond tree. And that was one of the house that I grew up with. I'd be in my house, which was very rural Cuba, and then we to visit my grandmother. So I was there with my grandfather, and she was rocking, and my dad it's the first time that I could remember my dad cry in my life. I had never seen that man. He was a farmer, a worker, a brute, and that was the first time I just saw tears, and I didn't understand why we didn't stop at that time. And then, of course, it was explained to me that he would have put her in jeopardy and all kinds of stuff. So, right. We came here, and the plan was to either try to go back or have her come. But, years later, she passed away, and we never saw her again. He never got to say goodbye, even though he drove right in front of her. So, it was something that stays with you. And I think one of the biggest tragedies of the Cuban Revolution has been the separation of family. I think 100%. That is the biggest loss, more than economic, more than that, the separation of our stupid ideology.
100%, man. I agree. I mean, there's so much to it. It's not like, yeah, that's a huge part. I'm with you 100%, Rene. But there's just so much intricacies and so many things that it affects your daily life that sometimes you're not even aware. Just like your family dynamic, the way you see yourself, sometimes the way you see your culture. Just I once told my father. I made a mention about this before in a previous episode that it's weird sometimes being Cuban because you can't sometimes have pride in your own country. Like when you watch the team in the Olympics or if they're playing the baseball tournament, like everybody's cheering their country, everybody's proud, everybody's wearing the flags, and you're like the only one going, screw them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just such a weird thing, right?
And that
But
happens when a country or a government, and this is true for anywhere in the world, when every single thing about a country is politicized, then you lack, you know, uh, identity. In essence, you
right,
lack identity because for us, for Cuban Americans, I feel like if I hang an American flag outside my house now, they're gonna think this guy's a total right wing guy. So you can't take pride in the American flag and in the Olympics team because if you don't think it's happening here, it's happening everywhere. I don't care.
yeah,
I'm apolitical. I'm not Republican. I'm not. I don't give a. I think both parties are full of, if you
Yep,
know what I
I
mean,
agree.
crap,
No, I agree.
full
I
of
agree with
freaking crap, and
you.
it's
Sí, todos conmigo.
controlled by the 10% extreme on each side, and it's all because of political financing and special groups. So politics in this country is really terrible the way it's being polarized. But that also happens, and if you are sitting at home and you're thinking, I see this political campaign, and all of a sudden this guy is the savior, and then the next commercial right after, because they don't even put a car commercial in between now, is this guy is done with the Russians and he's gonna blow up Miami, and you're like, if you're sitting at home, which of the two? They're both saying horrible things and not
yeah.
having the people in mind and the citizens in mind. So it lacks pride. You lack pride, and for us Cubans, it's a double whammy because if we celebrate too much at the Marlins game when Cuba comes, este tipo vino con esta gente de Cuba, será como
Ah,
ahorita.
mira
You
este
know,
tipo, ¿qué le pasa a este tipo?
it's we're kind of like, hey,
How did the gringos treat you when you guys arrived to this country? I've heard stories. My in-laws in particular. So we came in the late '80s, so we weren't a part of that kind of. I think the United States, Miami in particular, was already kind of adjusting to Cubans being a thing in Miami. I think when during your time period, those that came in the '70s and the '60s had a different experience. I heard stories about people throwing rocks at the Cubans, kind of treating them like dirt in a certain way. Did you have any experiences like that when you came here, or was the country very accommodating from your experience?
absolutely. Are you kidding me? I just always remember my aunt telling me stories. No, when we came in the '60s, they had, you would see signs here in Miami that would say for rent, no, no pets, no Cubans. It was like, and I
Right.
said, well, I didn't have that experience, but obviously, I think South Florida wasn't ready to handle such a large size. Till recent years, that was one of the largest migration all at once to come into this country. So I think it put a stress on everything, and the authorities, the local authorities here, didn't know what to do. I mean, it would, because, for example, I'm here now in my dad's house, which is by Miami Airport, which is the house I grew up in, and I should have gone to the school district that's down here for my elementary school. First of all, I was too advanced for my age in academics in Cuba, so they made me do sixth grade again. And then instead of going to the regular elementary school that was down the street from where we were staying at my aunt's house, which was my legal resident, which was predominantly Cuban and American, they would bus us to Overtown. And Overtown
Oh,
is
yeah.
not it was not in 1980. Overtown was not the design district that it is
Oh, I
today.
know.
It was not Midtown. It was not the walls. It was not the artists. It was Overtown, Miami. So I
Yep.
went to Douglas Park Elementary, and you would have this bus of Cuban kids, and we were the only white kids in the school. It was 100% African American school, a black school, and the from the bridges, the people throwing bottles at us, throwing rocks at us from the. We would have to go into the school, and these kids, in their defense, they were like, "Who are these people?" They
Right.
had no, I know you could say whatever you want about schools and district and segregation and all that, but we will know Miami in the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, you had very pocketed neighborhoods. So these neighborhoods didn't interchange too much and didn't interact too much. So I remember my brother was younger than me, and I remember vividly at Douglas Park Elementary in 1980 when I went to there for my sixth grade. Um, the bell would ring from one class to the other. My brother would wait for me at the door of his classroom. I would pick him up and walk him to his class in case we were to get jumped. I would be able to defend him. So it was like crazy like that. And it happened to my cousin in high school as well. So we had that experience of, and finally then they started and we came to Citrus and I went to Miami High and then I ended up being founding class of New World School of the Arts. But that path to go from 1980 Douglas Park to me graduating high school in 1988 as founding class of New World School of the Arts was from not speaking a word of English, for not knowing what the word acting was, for fighting every day to survive, and till finally getting accepted into Payback at Miami-Dade, which was an honors program, and then graduating from New World School of the Arts. So
we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that because I want to talk about your start in acting. But I think Abel, you had a question.
No, he answered it. I was gonna say, me imagino que ya aprendiste a pelear, bro, a tirar piñazo y todo, because that must have been.
Bueno, como puedes ver que yo hablo bastante de mierda también, así que con eso me defendí un poco, pero había que. The thing is, we grew up as part of it, so to us it wasn't like, my brother and they asked us, "Are you racist?" No, it was like these were our friends too. At the end, they became our friends as well, and la necesidad hace que uno se ajuste, and I think it made us more aware of that there were my other kids that went to Coral Gables and went to other my friends, that later didn't have this experience. For me as an actor, when I took that and I got to New York and I was doing something, I didn't come as from lower or whatever the schools in Miami that are, the upper
the fancy school,
the fancy school, Columbus or any of that stuff.
Yeah, Belen, Columbus, St. Brendan.
So you got
Miami High.
Yeah, I'm a Miami Sunset Senior High.
So you know the drill.
I know the drill. Kendall Lakes, Bowman Foster Ash, hammocks, Sunset. So, all right. So you get into high school. You get into acting in high school, right? And I think I read something along the lines that you were kind of like this jock kind of guy who wasn't having like the greatest grades in the world or whatever, and back and forth. And maybe you were just adjusting to the American life and entertained by it all, and it was affecting you. Let's just put it that way. Obviously, good looking cat, right? So I'm sure there was things in your life in that sense that were distracting you. That were distracting you, right?
People estaba mojando bizcocho.
Exactly. So you get into the New World School of the Arts and you get into acting. What really got you into it, though? What made you think this would be a great idea? Let me get into this acting gig.
Yeah, that's an excellent question because, Miami High, man, was in the 80s. That was Havana High. That was the name of it. We had a bunch of other Marielitos like me and people that grew up in the neighborhood. So you necessarily didn't hang out with the right crowd. I was hanging out with this group called the X Club in our school. So we ended up getting into a lot of trouble. I ended up doing 10th grade twice because my first time around 10th grade, I basically never went to school. And then I always played baseball, but I tried out for the football team and I made the football team and I didn't have the grades. I was like, I didn't go to 10th grade basically. So the coach was like, dude, if you're going to play, you got to listen and do this. And so he said, take this acting class, sit in the back, put your head down, sleep, get a passing grade, and you're going to play. So I said, okay, I'll take the acting class. And I, remember at Miami High, it was all the way at the fourth floor. It was the only little class that was up in the fourth floor. And I would go up to that class and I would sit in the back with my head down. And every once in a while, me reía o hacía un smirk at the, other people that were in the class, or be looking at the girls, but never. I always like, and the teacher would keep saying, hey, if you think it's so easy, get on stage. And I would like, oh no, that's not for me, this teacher, which till this day we're friends, she's in her 80s. As a matter of fact, we just did a tribute this year to her at Miami High, where we had classes from all the years come and fill the auditorium because she was just one of the best theater teachers in South Florida. I mean, every actor has gone through there. Stephen Bauer, everybody has had this high school drama teacher. She's retired years ago, but we're still good friends. And she's coming to see Sweet 15 Quinceañera. She's coming, so we're still friends. Marty Hancock. So my love to Marty Hancock and to all the amazing teachers that could make an impact and make a kid change his life.
Voy a tirar un aplauso.
Un aplauso ahí para Marty Hancock, ¿ok? Y todavía está ahí acabando. but she is she kept challenging me and challenging me and challenging me, and one day I finally got on stage, and I never came off. I found a reason. I found a way to channel my passion. I just it turned my life around, man. I ended up making it into honor school. She enrolled me in all these state competitions. I started winning all kinds of awards, and then I was like gearing away from baseball, from football, and I found myself my senior year, and she says, "You got to audition for New World." I'm like, "That school's for rich kids. What am I doing? Yo tengo un cubanito con el acento que tengo yo." Because I never got the lead in any play. They would do Shakespeare, this and that. Yo hacía 8 personajes. No hacía el que entraba por aquí, el que tiraba la cosa, el que hacía lo otro. All my friends were like the leads and the this and the that, you know. Después me los encontré todos en Nueva York, fueron a Julia, endeudado, y me decían, "Oye, brother, you're working, tírame un cabo, how do you do it?
Oh my God. Yeah, and then so you started. I'm sure there was some gigs before the soaps, right? There were probably some maybe some short films or maybe some independent films that were before. But I want to focus on your time on the soaps, in particular. One here that I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna show one of the little banners. Check this guy out. Hold on, espérate, we gotta
Rene,
show,
this is your life.
we gotta show the cream of the crop here. Hold on now.
Vamos a ver.
Voy a tener que hacer esto un Irish coffee para que
Enamorada. Look at Rene. Look right here. Look, Rene.
Mira que mal le pelo, compadre. I had the hair, bro.
Rene estaba metiendo palo like crazy. Yo seguro que no, I'm not gonna get into that.
No.
But but your time during the soaps, man, how did you get into that, and how did you enjoy that? Because I think in Enamorada you were like on 100 episodes or something like that. That was
that was crazy.
That was for like a while.
Yeah, that was the first lead I got in a soap opera. It was really weird. I got into it kind of by accident because I came out of New World and then I got accepted to New World College, which is supposed to be. I mean, New World was. The guy who created New World was Richard Klein, which was LaGuardia School of the Arts in New York, like the TV show Fame, and that was based on that school. So I even the best of the best of the best. So I went to the college, and then I was getting gigs. I started working at Power 96 as a DJ. I was getting theater gigs. I was getting tons of commercial. I know this is a conservatory. You can't come. You can't this. Finally, after the second year, me fui de New World. Que todo el mundo dijo, pero you're at New World, the best school, because I was getting work. And I had I had my start in theater, which I to this day with Rubén Rabasa, who's in this play, which is a legendary Cuban actor, were some of my plays. I started doing plays in English y después hice crossover al revés. Empecé a hacer cosas en español, and I started working on my Spanish a little bit porque tenía el español bien cubano, acababa de llegar, that stuff. But I did it kind of backwards, and I ended up landing a part on a Spanish novela, which was called Morelia. And I had a supporting role on that one. And from when I was doing Morelia, my agent says, "Listen, they want you to fly to New York to test for all my children." And I'm like, I still have months to finish this novela, my first novela. And so I got flown to New York, ABC, and I tested with Kelly Ripa, porque por cierto, Kelly Ripa me metió un beso ese día que yo decía, las novelas latinas no tienen nada que ver. Mi respeto a Mar Consuelo, that's her husband, familia. Pero cuando esa fue mi experiencia, llegar a la novela americana, dije, okay. So they ended up booking Mark on All My Children, and I came back to Miami. Well, at least somebody I know got it, Florida boy. Y de pronto ABC called again my agent and said, "Listen, there's another role that's going to come up on One Life to Live, and we're going to write him a role." And they wrote me a role, and then I went 3 years to New York. Yo no había visto nunca nieve ni nada. Llegué a Nueva York en medio del verano, qué rico. And I had not finished Morelia yet, so I would be in Miami 2 or 3 days shooting Morelia, and then I would go to New York and shoot One Life to Live for 2 or 3. Y así me lo pasé como casi 2 meses. A veces en Nueva York metí una cosa en español o me equivocaba porque estaba haciendo las dos novelas a la misma vez, y terminamos siéndonos. We were the first novela that had a Latino storyline and of course I had to be the lead, a clean cut me, a leader of a gang. So ABC fue para allá, trajeron un preso de la cárcel, un ganguero, so I could study the guy. Oye, I used to go to school in Overtown. ¿Tú me vas a enseñar a mí un pandillero, no?
Exacto.
Pero bueno, we did that, and my buddy Camar de los Reyes and I were the first Latinos that were on daytime soap opera. And unfortunately, he passed this past year in Christmas. A good buddy of mine, half Cuban, half Puerto Rican guy, Camar de los Reyes, one of my best friends. And him and I were, and then they went with Ricky Martin and Lily on General Hospital, y Mark and All My Children. So ABC was kind of like the first one de hacer el crossover para allá. Y por eso no me quedé en el mundo ese de la novela. Hice la de enamorado y ya no.
María Belén, that was the other one.
María Belén, that was another one.
Y entonces, ¿qué te gustaría, René? ¿Qué te gusta más? ¿Te gusta being like live on a theater? Do you like the movie thing? Do you like TV series? You know,
I mean, all of them have their art. You know, like theater, you have to be engaging, and you don't get a second take, and you can't phone it in, and you don't have. So that connection with the audience, como lo que estamos haciendo ahora with the show that we're doing now, is interactive. So we bring the audience up with, oh, jodemos con ellos, and we do, and that is, you're really embodying the character. In a movie you shoot sometimes the scene where you're breaking up with somebody todavía no la conocido, you know. So it's like, and the soap opera is somewhere in between. Soap opera audiences watch you in their house when they're taking care of their kids, cooking, watching, or whatever. So they treat you like they know you, like family. But film act, you know, they see you more like, oh my God, you know. Film wise, while I was doing, again, eso siempre me pasa, when I was doing, I had just signed my contract with ABC, coño, por fin el cubanito la pegó en una novela.
Sí.
León Michazo, a great Cuban American film director, El Cantante with J-Lo and Mark Anthony. He did Piñero with Benjamin Bratt. He did El Super back in the day, Azúcar Amarga. And out of all of my work, theater, TV, film, Christmas with the Cranks, anything, that is the one that I'm the most proud of. You know, because it was
and we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that one. I have a few questions about that one. I also have a little video that I want to show. It's kind of like a clip from when you were on there. Cuando la suegra, in particular, I'm sure you know the scene. Cuando la suegra gets into you about being with her daughter and this and that and the other and yada yada. I was able to find that scene online. I was a great acting. But I want to talk really quickly about your time with the Cranks. I know that during the Christmas time is kind of when Rene Lavan's social media prowess kind of starts tingling all over the place. I could tell you're just very
and in January is when the residual checks come in.
Yeah, I tell, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't think of that one. So I can tell overall though you're very proud of just your time on that experience and stuff and being around you know these great actors. So I was going to show just a screenshot here of Rene. Look at Rene, bro. Look at Rene. How young, bro. Look at that. I have another. I know I'm sharing up, and we're going back to Enamorada, but I have this one here. But this is with what's the name of this actress again, Rene?
Julie Gonzalo. A lot of
Julie
people,
Gonzalo.
she plays American in the movie. She's a daughter, but she's Argentinian. She's Argentinian.
Really? Yeah, that's the girl. I think she has like a little scar on her eyebrow.
That's her. Super beautiful girl, great person.
Bien bonitilla.
And she had done a bunch of other movies, like those teen movies. She did a lot of stuff, you know, before Christmas with the Cranks. So it was nice. It was great working with her.
I had
aguantar la risa con Tim Allen. ¿A quién lo aguantaba?
No, y ese gringo que volaba con él, bro.
Oh my God.
Is he funny as shit or what?
No, the problem is that he's the whole time joking around and saying bad words. Entonces directo dice action y el tipo hace así. And he's like in the scene and everybody else is laughing. Entonces directo viene y le grita a todo el mundo. He is out there. Out there. Yeah, we shot that movie in the middle of the summer in California at 100 degrees in the valley. And it's supposed to be Chicago in the winter. So con los abrigos, fake snow, todo eso era fake. Todo lo que había ahí era fake snow. Un calor con los abrigos, eso.
I've heard, and I think Abel, you once mentioned something about that usually during like the winter scenes, they tend to shoot them in the summer. And
yeah, what happened with us was that I was that one scene we're supposed to be in the desert and you're supposed to act like it's 150 degrees. But when I was in Los Angeles that I filmed that, it was 40 freaking degrees, bro. So we were all inside of
Death Valley or anywhere out there, you're dying.
My brother, so estábamos todos con una chaqueta rehearsing in the car y going through the lines. Y entonces el tipo decía, all right, the scene tal y tal, actors, get out there quick. Entonces uno se quitaba las chaquetas y entonces con los t-shirts, entonces just acting like it's really hot y tocándote el eyebrow and throwing your lines. Pero bro, we were freezing.
Oh my God. I think that's probably worse than pretending you're cold in hot weather. Okay,
But why do they do that? Why do they do that?
Because they can control the climate, and California, just because the desert gets cold at night. So if you're shooting it, no matter what time of year, it gets pretty cold.
Yeah, well, that's true. Because if you were shooting the cranks and there was like a legit winter storm outside, I'm sure the filming is not going to be as smooth as the other way around, right?
Yeah, and they control all the environment, so it's like that. Pero en esa película, I got to work with Dan Aykroyd, which is awesome. Dan is great, Blues Brother legend.
You had a scene with him in the house when you.
We're part of the band. We sing together. Yo nunca.
That's right.
Mira, mi papá canta, toca. Aquí estaba escribiendo música. Mi mamá canta. Mi hermano y yo, tonda. Ni Happy Birthday on cue, ¿ok? So me dan la película, me dicen, oye, you're going to sing a Christmas song. And you know who, it's a song in Spanish, but de soprano, Steven Van Sant wrote the song. Pero en español, bueno, y me puse nervioso. I hired a vocal coach for 2 months. Oye, no estoy jugando. Todos los días ahí cantando la canción como un anormal, hours, y así nervioso. I get to the set to do the song, y yo estaba nervioso, and I told Jamie, I can't sing, that is one of my, no, I had to sing in front of everybody, no solamente ellos, pero everybody I'm talking about. Y ¿cómo se llama esto? Jamie me dijo, just look at me and sing the song to me, and don't look at Tim, don't look at anybody. I got it out, I got through the song. I had already done 2 movies with Jamie Lee Curtis. I did True Lies here in Miami. I worked for 2 weeks in True Lies. No one knows who I am because I'm wearing a ski mask. I'm one of Arnold's SWAT guys, and I'm the guy who throws her in that room where he interviews her with a twisted voice and whatever. And we worked that with James Cameron. He's sick about how many angles of cameras and this. Jamie me dijo, do you remember what a nightmare that scene was? Because it was really hard to shoot.
Ven acá, y ese era ella en el bikini porque estaba bien, óyeme, tremendo cuerpo tiene.
Tú sabes que ahora está mayor y todo eso, pero cuando estábamos haciendo Christmas with the Cranks, I get to the set the first day, right? And they're shooting a scene, so they send me to lunch first. En un tent, pero estoy hablando que era del tamaño de un football field, y el único tipo que estaba sentado con una bandejita comiendo, because they wanted me to finish, go to, wardrobe and makeup and all that to get ready for the next scene, cuando se acabara el lunch. Y estoy sentado y comiendo yo solo ahí, ¡pum! Una bandeja así al lado mío. Y cuando miro para arriba, Jamie Lee Curtis me dice, I don't know who you are, I don't know what you're doing on this set, but in this set, nobody eats alone. Y se sentó a comer al lado mío. Empezó a comer, entonces more people joined. En un momento dado le digo, Jamie, I don't know if you remember me, we worked together, and she turned around y se paró imagínate, yo calladito para no ni hablar, ahí estaba todos esos estrellas, Jake Busey, and that movie had a bunch of cameos. It was directed by Joe Roth, the head of the studio, so cualquier actor que quería, he had it in the film. Y yo calladito ahí, y ella dice, Rene, get up, tell everybody here that they didn't use a body double in True Lies. You were there. And I'm like, qué pena, bro. Es así. Pero Jamie is one of the sweetest human beings and actresses that I've ever. She's an incredible woman. She's just truly special. I love her. Pero pasé una pena, bro.
No, I can imagine.
Primero que nada, que hago yo vacilando en un bikini si yo no estoy en la escena.
Oye, se ganó un Oscar hace poco, ¿no?
Sí. Yeah, she did, bro. She's
good for her.
Yeah, man. No, she definitely, and shit. Anyway, and even I'm not even gonna lie. Even in the Cranks, I was like, no,
y ahí estaba ya mayorcita. Ahí conocí yo también a Chich, porque yo tengo unas escenas donde he's driving.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Otro jugador. So I met him there, and then he would jodiendo. So when we went to do with the same writer and director of this play that I'm doing now in Miami, Rick Najera, him and I did a show called Latino Logs, which was a stand-up comedy show of monologues about the Latino experience in America, and the show was like critically acclaimed. We did 50 cities in the U.S. a tour with Eugenio Derbez, and we ended up on Broadway. We were on Broadway, and Eugenio Derbez learned his monologues phonetically. He didn't speak English, and so we were kind of like and then they came to see him in Broadway, and then Eugenio has had an amazing career. But the visa for America, we got it for him. Eugenio is a great guy, and that is the same writer and director for this show. And when we were doing Christmas with the Cranks, I met Cheech and I said, hey, Cheech, we're doing this tour of Latino Looks and we're going to end up on Broadway. Would you come direct it? And so Cheech came and directed us on Broadway after we had done the tour with Eugenio. So Cheech Marin directed Eugenio Derbez in his American debut.
That's awesome.
There's some information a lot of people don't know.
No, that's great info, man. I love it.
That's super cool. I mean, who would have thought that? Sometimes you never know, like when you're working on something.
Or who connects the dots.
That's going to end up being something else, and that, whatever, and yada yada. That's
I'm
cool
sure you're not going to hear Eugenio Derbez say when he's winning an Academy Award, because he's in all these movies that are nominated. Cuando se gane la Academy, no va a decir, I remember when Rene, went to get me at the hospital after I passed out one night because he had a panic attack with the mom. The first night he performed in LA, he ended up at the hospital with a panic attack.
I believe it. It was too much, huh?
So because there was, and he's that guy is a pro. I love him. I used to finish my monologues, change quick, and go to see him work because he's just a master of comedy. He's just a brilliant guy and a really good person, good human being.
So you made a mention before.
Va a ser mexicano.
Coño, la tiraste duro, René. Tiraste.
No, si Rick también es mexicano.
Yo sé que estamos todos aquí.
Oye, this show is not. By the way, this show is not filtered, bro. However you want to say it and whatever. So you don't have to bleep yourself.
Remember that,
You don't have to be careful.
We're all family here.
That's the whole point of Cuban dudes. It's like we're just a bunch of Cuban dudes aquí hablando mierda, just having a good time, just whatever. And
I can relate.
Yeah, so I'm sure you can, man. Rene, excuse me, you made a mention about Azúcar Amarga. You're technically a leading role, right? In that production, right? And I want to show a quick clip of that before I ask you a few questions about it. Let me load this up here. Give me 1 second, Rene.
You got it.
No, yo vine a visitar a ella, a decirle que...
¿Decirle qué? Decírselo en la cama, con el brazo por encima de ella. ¿Por qué tú estás llorando, mi amor?
Déjame explicar, esto no es lo que parece. Yo nada más vine a despedirme de Yolanda, a traerle un regalito. Esto no...
No, si a todo le parece mal.
No me hables así porque te voy a meter un galletazo.
¿Pero por qué si yo no he hecho nada?
Señora, por favor.
Por favor, nada. Óyeme lo que te voy a decir. No te vayas a creer que yo soy una idiota. En esta casa, la que manda soy yo. En esta casa, la que lo resuelve todo soy yo. Y mientras yo sea tu madre y tú vivas en mi casa, no te creas que te voy a permitir que me estés trayendo hombres aquí, ¿oíste?
¿Pero por qué tú me dices eso?
Bueno, está bueno ya, chica. Se acabó. Mira, muchacho, hazme el favor, vete. Vete, hazme el favor.
Pobre.
No, se fue blue ball de tipo.
Pobre.
No, pobrecito, lo jodieron.
Un comunista como ese. Tu padrastro se metió 8 años.
Y lo peor es que me llamaron comunista. I could have dealt with the other, pero oye, me llamaron comunista, eso no me cuadró.
Sorry.
Sí, eso no te cuadró nada.
Sorry, Rene.
I could deal with the blue ball, pero oye, lo de comunista no.
Sí, ya, eso es una falta de respeto, coño.
Ahí ya están jodiendo. No, man, that movie was just so special, so special, so special. I remember we did it the same year that Robert Redford did Havana y se gastó 25 millones, no sé qué cosa, hacer un set en Dominican Republic y nadie pensó que esa película estaba en La Habana y nosotros con 3 kilos, because literally we shot it con 3 kilos. And we sent the film crew, just the DP and que eran dominicanos, y el otro que iba al camera se vistió de mí y se metía por las calles, por los cementerios Colón y por todas las cosas to make it look like I was there, because we would have never been able to shoot this movie in Cuba. And I just think Leon Ichazo, also, passed away last year. A great filmmaker that gets it, and that movie struck a chord. They played it here in Miami, and for 6 months at Coco Walk, they closed it and had to reopen it again. It became like this phenomenon that I had never seen. I remember sitting in the back of the theater and hearing people weeping and applauding at a movie theater where there's no actors, there's just a screen. So it was just a unique perspective on what was going on with Cuba. That just it was a heartbreaking story.
And my apologies, we had a little bit of like a technical thing there after I shared the video. So so if you heard me say something to Abe, it was just because I was going to reload my feed here. So
no worries.
Apologies on that. But we were listening to what you were saying, Rene, which so yes, the movie does seem like I've never watched the whole movie. That's a movie actually I've seen in parts. I've seen a lot of clips. It always comes up whenever I research anything about the history of Cuba. That movie's always referenced a lot in a lot of different documentaries and things that I've seen online. So I am going to get myself to watch the whole thing because it does look like an impactful movie for sure. On the movie, you do play a communist, or do you not?
No. He plays a young guy coming out of the school Lenin, which is one of the like the high school of
Right.
Cuba, and he wants to be an astronaut. Basically, that's his dream. He has a vision of his mom dressed as a revolutionary, and she
Right.
had died in a car accident. And so every photo of her is so that's was his dream, is that his mom was this huge revolutionary.
He's in that idealism phase.
Idealism phase, and he thinks and then he supposedly wins a scholarship to go to Czech Republic to study and all these things. And then it's one of those roles that are really hard to play because the guy who plays my brother in the movie, that role is very defined. The father is complete dissident, hates he's talking the whole time crap about and he's a psychologist who's playing piano at a hotel for tourists because he makes more money there. And so, but this character is, I describe it as collapsing one floor at a time. You're realizing the lies on top of lies that this government and this communism has, and the damage that it has done to generations now. And I remember, I was in my early 20s and I was just reconnecting with my roots, and we watched hours of videos de los balseros tirándose en la balsa, and you'd see government boats, officials in jeeps giving them forecasts. The winds are out of like stuff that that you would go, what? These people have really lost touch with any kind of sensitivity whatsoever. And we had a Canadian prop guy that went to Cuba and brought back history books and props. And when I was sitting between scenes reading the history, they changed history. They changed historic events.
Yeah, we've all heard of those things.
And I was going, what? And it was just such an experience, and it was my true reconnection to my roots and my the struggle of every immigrant and of Cuba. And it really reconnected me, because when I came, I was little. I tried to be the first kid out of ESOL. I didn't want to be called Marielita. I didn't want to be. And then all of a sudden, I did a complete 360, and I wanted all of it.
Yeah,
I wanted to be more Cuban than the Cubans that were there. So and I think it's happened a couple of times. It happened when I did the Amparo experience, which was another amazing play that we did about the Havana Club rum, and it was an immersive play that we did here in 2019 before the COVID. Again, that was such a reconnection with that story, and the people creating, the director, the writers, are Cuban Americans, and I'm going, maybe there is hope after all these generations of people gritando, oh, comunismo, this and this, and nothing happened here, that the youth today really get it. And to me, I'm like, dude, like, where were you for the last 40 years of my life, where you had these guys with the radio stations and communism was a business for both sides,
It is a weird phenomenon when we are. So I know that in Miami, I always wanted to be. I mean, I was Hispanic. I had no choice, right? I mean, but you kind of dream for this like Americanness. You just want to get away. You're so sick and tired. And then I had a short stint living in Vegas for 2 years, just for professional reasons. And then when I was in Vegas, I was blasting reggaeton out the window. I was the biggest Hispanic around. You couldn't be more Hispanic than I was. It's so weird how it starts coming out of our pores whenever we're not around it daily, that you just ooze the culture, and you have this need for people to understand that you're Hispanic. Isn't that weird, Rene? I mean, because that sounds like what you went through.
I went through the same thing. I mean, I was in New York, LA, and then when I got to LA, and you would say to someone in Cuba, and it would be like, oh my God, it was like a novelty. It was like this, that, and then of course it would go, oh my God, I was in Havana. It's fantastic. And I'm like, wait, I'm Cuban, but I'm not that Cuban. So I had a few of that as well, because they also romanticize a lot of the stuff. And everyone with a Che Guevara T-shirt, I would go, listen,
Which leads me to my follow-up question, Rene. I want to ask you about this. So you have Azúcar Amarga. We all know, right? We all know what kind of Cubans we are, if you understand what I mean, right? And I understand your trajectory and everything. But then I see that you're casted on the Che Guevara movie, which does lead me to ask a very obvious question, right? why associate yourself with a film like that? Why, as a Cuban who has been through everything you've been through, man, your family's been through and everything, you know how we see Che Guevara. We see Che Guevara as a monster. We
No,
don't
of
see him as
course.
a hero. So I'm just curious about, and I just want to understand, right? What was the reasoning behind wanting to be a part of a project like that? Is it just because you got the opportunity and you weren't going to pass that up, or was it something deeper than that? I just want to understand what was the thinking.
No, I think that's a great question because I came right to this house when I was offered that movie, and I sat with my dad and I said, hey, I have this opportunity to do this, and I don't know what the script was hushed. The audition was, I didn't audition. Basically, they had me in a conversation when I was doing Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights, the second part to Dirty Dancing. We shot in Puerto Rico. And again, another movie, Dancing in Cuba in 1958, where the revolution was happening. But it was a gig, and I got to meet Patrick Swayze, and it actually ended up being a good movie because it didn't touch politics. Really, they didn't romanticize it either way. But Benicio's del Toro's sister was working with us in the production as a production assistant, and Benicio was friends with the producer of Havana Nights. And he came to set one day and he saw my work and he said, "Oh, whatever, hello." He, didn't say much, but sure enough, I was in New York 2 years later and my phone rings. They want you in the movie. Benicio has requested you to be in the movie. So I went, I did the thing, I did the casting, I did everything. And I ended up in the movie without reading a script. But, knowing Soderbergh, one of my favorite directors of all the time, Benicio del Toro, who I'd met and I admired tremendously, incredible actor, solid actor, and an opportunity to go out there and say, if I'm asked, if I'm, whatever character it is, I'm gonna always have my opinion, and
what if they would have came and said, you know what, Benicio doesn't want to do this anymore. Rene Lavan, we need you to play Che Guevara. What would you have done, man?
Well, then I'll answer you this: if, as an actor, if you're asked to play Jack the Ripper, if you're asked to play a rapist, if the Italians go to Al Pacino, hey man, how could you play Hoffa? How could you be the Irishman? We fucking hate the Irish. How could you?
I understand, but I'm just saying, if how like people in Miami are, Rene. You go back to Miami, show your face, be like, hey, you know how people are. People don't understand that shit.
You'll never be able to go back to Versailles to get una croquetica and shit.
So I'm kind of looking at it, and I completely understand you, Rene, and I understand.
I don't know if I would have done the Che Guevara role. I honestly don't know if I would have done that.
Imagine having to come to your parents and be like, "No, now I'm going to play Che instead." What would your dad have said?
My scene was a Cuban diplomat and it wasn't anything of substance in the film, and we only got basically to see the scenes that we were in. I didn't know this was going to be like a 2-part thing, and how much intricate and how much one-sided it was, because I always sat and said, there's 2 sides to this story, you could romanticize all you want. So at the end of the day, you have to make a choice, y después la última cosa que mi papá me dijo es que un actor no se faja con la cartera.
Exacto.
Si te van a pagar por hacer un papel, tú haces un papel. And you're at that level at a Hollywood movie. I could say the same thing to all the people that were in the Wasp story. That is the worst representation of that event. The Wasp Network. I don't know if we lost him because he jumped off again.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes this is still some of the
perils.
What I was saying is, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rene. I'm saying.
What I was saying is, look, you could say the same thing. You have all these great Spanish actors that we love. Even what's her name that played Marilyn Monroe?
Ana de Armas.
Ana de Armas. The Wasp Network. Watch that movie.
100%.
That to me is terribly, because some people fantasized about Che. Some people in that era were brainwashed. So if you're talking about the era, they fantasize. But this Wasp Network, these murderers, everybody knows this story. There was no fantasies on how they knocked down those airplanes and how this guy came and took advantage of this woman and was a complete terrorist. Everybody, and they paint him, and look at all these great actors, Hollywood actors that we all love, Penelope Cruz, all these people that were in that movie telling a wrong story. So that to me, that's, me, a Cuban diplomat, 2 scenes. I don't even know if I had a name in the movie.
Listen. I'm not saying anything about it, Rene. I'm just asking the question just to
But
kind
it was
of
a hard choice. It was a hard choice. I had to. You're right about that. I had to like.
To me, it was just to me it's just more of like just the train of thought, just what was the thinking, because of course, once again, we're in a way, we're also not brain. I don't want to use the word brainwash, but we're brought up, to be like anything associated with that. God forbid you even wear a Che Guevara shirt just to kind of look trendy in a red carpet or something. Your family and everybody that you've ever known probably will never speak to you again. It's kind of that
Easily.
level, right?
Easily.
So I'm just wondering, when I see your credits and I see your stuff, I go, wait a minute, he was in this. So instinct as a Cuban, I'm like, why would he? And immediately I was like, I gotta ask him the question as to what was the thinking of being in a project.
No, and it was
it
good
makes
that
sense.
you asked me that, because it's true.
It makes sense,
it wasn't an easy choice to make, that's for sure.
But it's like you said, an actor, you know what I mean, gets put up against any role, and it doesn't matter how you feel. That's the whole point of being an actor. You act out these realities, right? So yeah, of course. And Abel knows, because Abel
I've dabbled a little bit.
Is dabbled a little bit in the acting.
If you see me as a drag queen, guys, just know I'm acting.
Yeah.
Ya estás con parte del Illuminati.
Ya te fuiste para el otro lado, no, pues ya me vas a ver con 1 million followers.
For sure. ¿Cómo que se llama la película que hicieron Patrick Swayze, el moreno
Wong Fu,
esa,
Newmar.
y el
con John
colombiano.
Leguizamo. Yeah.
That was a good one.
So tell me about this production, Rene. Sweet 15's Quinceañera with Rick Najera, right? He's the producer and the creator, right?
He's the writer and director. And
writer and director.
Yeah, and I'm the producer, and I'm the dad in the story. Man,
yeah, how did you come about this? How did this all start?
Rick and I had worked together, obviously, on Latino Logs for years. We did the tour, we did Broadway together, and then we've stayed friends throughout. I went on my career, and he has gone on to do a lot of other things. He wrote Nothing Like the Holidays with John Leguizamo, a great movie, and he writes all the time. He used to write for Mad TV and Living Color. I mean, the guy is like, a great Mexican-American writer. Like, his comedy stuff is just solid. So during the pandemic, and then the Writers Guild strike came before the SAG strike. And I get a phone call from Rick, like, look, I'm a writer, I can't work, but we can work in theater. So he said, we toyed with the idea of bringing Latino Logs back as a revival. And he goes, no, man, I got this show that I did years ago at the San Diego Rep, like 15 years ago, called Sweet 15. It's about Quinceañera. I said, whoa, you have me at Quinceañera because the culture in Miami, you know how many quinces I danced when I was a kid, and so we said, okay, let's do it. And we put together a cast. We did it in Chicago at the end of last year just to test the material out. Chicago is a good comedy test meter. You have Second City, you have the audiences there are very picky with the comedy. So we did a few shows in Chicago, and we said, wow, this is really, we could really update this. And of course, we weren't going to stay there in the winter. So I said, why don't we do it in Miami, and why don't we up the Spanish a little bit more, and we make it more in Spanglish. So we're not only doing probably the first interactive quince play, but it's also in Spanglish. So in real Spanglish, not yo quiero ser tu abogado Spanglish. It's the way we go, and we code switch, and we switch, and the wife and I will go into, and the response has been immediate. I mean, people have jumped on. Comedians, stand-up comics are coming in. Mr. Red, who is a guy down here that we love, jumped in with us, and he does great sketch comedy. So the show is about a father who's about to throw his quinceañera to his daughter's quinceañera, and he can't afford it. He's really, so he borrows money from un shady character, un manatico por ahí, un loan shark, and he gambles that money, loses it because he's a professional gambler, basically, loses it for the first time in his life, and he has to hide in Mexico for his family, his daughter. They all think he's dead. He comes back, and this is where the play starts. His daughter's now 22 years old. The guy who he borrowed the money from is in prison, and he thinks he could surprise his family. Now he's become successful in real estate in Mexico, and he wants to throw a surprise quinceañera for his now 22-year-old daughter, who thinks quinceañeras are the worst thing, like, so it's a story about forgiveness. It's got a lot of heart. There's moments that will touch your heart as well. But at the same time, when he tries to put this quinceañera together, everything that could go wrong goes wrong. I mean, from hiring the wrong celebrity name because the name was off by a few syllables, and that's what Ruben Rabasa comes in, was a star from back in the day, and like the comedy element of it, and it is just a crazy, crazy comedy.
Yeah, and it's interactive in the sense, I think, that you get fed. Is that correct? It's like you're a part of the party, right? Every single
Sí.
time. That's pretty.
Es
That's
como
pretty
venir a los
cool.
15 de Jacqueline.
That's pretty cool. I love that, and
Yeah.
and I come to find out that that's like becoming a thing, right? That
Yeah. These
a lot of
experimental things, that
plays are
shows.
doing that.
Yeah, and so the typical Miami banquet hall owner that wears
Mhm.
many hats
Yeah.
kind of doesn't spend the money in the right place, kind of, and so everything has to be made up in this quinceañera, and the audience members becomes the court, become the perform. It's you involve the audience, and we get so much out of it. Like, we laugh probably just as much as the audience laugh because of all that participation. And and at the end, it's a family story. It's we have in life all these quinceañeras. We have funerals, baptisms, boda, esto, lo otro, lo quince. But real life happens in between all those moments, and it's about those little moments that we have. So that's what the show, it reinforces family. It reinforces que lo que puede pasar pasa, and at the end of the day, that's part of living, and growing. So it strikes a good chord, and I think in Miami, con la jodedera de los 15, this is going to be, we've already sold a couple of the shows out completely already. So
Nice.
I think, and we're here for April, and then we're getting ready to do a tour after that with that and take it across the country. Maybe terminamos en Bravo otra vez. ¿Quién sabe?
Is the ideal website to purchase tickets sweet15show.com, right?
Yeah, it's sweet, the number 15show.com. So sweet15show.com.
I was including
That
it
sounds
here,
like
just
fun.
Yeah,
there's two, like, you still sit in the same quince tables and all that, but you have the option of buying the dinner and the open bar, para tener the whole quinceañera experience.
Claro,
Or you
claro.
could just go general admission and then you buy drinks and a la carte, but you still have the same experience. This is,
I'm not gonna lie.
all together.
I'm not gonna. So we're based out of Gainesville now. I've been living in Gainesville now for 3 years.
I know, I heard that.
Yeah, I mean, I raised in Miami since I was 5, so I've been lived all my life. So is Abel, but Abel's been up here a lot longer than I have. But the point is that if we were in Miami, I would 110% go to this. This is like
You
the
would have
coolest
to.
sounding thing.
You would have to.
Yeah, not only because
I'm gonna tape it for you.
yeah, no, I do want to definitely watch the experience, and I want to see it more from the point of view of the guests. I want to see what their faces
God.
look like
And
when they're being served drinks and food and stuff, and they're watching this.
And the cast is
so
just
cool.
We've put a cast together. These guys are all like amazing Cubano actors that have been here. Margarita Coego, she dates back to Los Beltrán on Telemundo. Like, she's a great comedian. Roberto Escobar, he's done a million plays, and he's in Telemundo, and those he always does those El Señor de los Cielos, all this and that, all dramatic, like, guys. But here his comedy is like so. And we have a couple of, like, the girl that plays the 22-year daughter. She's brilliant. Like, the show has a lot of heart, man. It's so much fun. I'm really happy that we brought it to Miami first before we really take it on the road, because it embraces. And then what we'll do with that is take it to other cities and adjust the actual stories to those cities. So,
Right.
the local references. Aquí es León Medical Center, Vicky's Bakery, todas las cosas locales from here,
Right.
Sponsored by Pinecrest Bakery.
Exactamente.
Is there anything about your career where you would go back and change anything? Because it seems like you had this time period around 2004, which was kind of like, it seemed like it was kind of like the crescendo sort of, right, of like your career. And you were with the Cranks, you were in Havana Nights. Of course, before that, we know you had other successes in the soap operas as well and things like that. But it almost seems like your career after 2004, between 2008, has like this weird kind of like look like doldrum. After 2008, you kind of hit a little bit of this period where you kind of just sort of, it's like you start to vacate a little bit like the industry in this way. And then I also was able to trace back your professional resume. It seems like you were more involved in like business development gigs and stuff, and like, you know, actually working more like corporate America, if you will, right?
One of our favorite radio stations.
Well, of course, well, you had Power 96 in the past, right? I think even before some of all these
Yeah,
different
before.
things.
I went right from high school there.
Yeah. So is there anything about your career that you would do different? Is there something there that you would look back on and be like, well, you know, if I would have instead made a right or versus a left, you know, I could be somewhere else right now. Like, is there something different about your past that you would do different?
You know, that's an excellent question. I think, you know, your path is what your path is, and you walk it and you live with the success or consequences of it, and everything makes you who you are today. And you wouldn't be having the same conversation with the same substance that I'm giving you today if I would have maybe made some better choices professionally, personally, you know. But, you know, nadie te quita lo bailado, y la experiencia vivida es lo que te hace también ser el actor que hoy. Lo bueno que uno tiene como actor es que you could be an actor in your 80s, 90s if you're still alive. You know, la vieja de Titanic se ganó un Oscar. So there's characters in different, you know, what I could say is this. I could say is the marketing of yourself, and not. I think if I would have stayed in one specific thing, I just loved the theater. I love the film. I love the TV. If I would have quedado en México con las novelas y en el cuerpecito y la cosa, I would have probably ser un galán de novela y ganar $1 million por novela, and that would have been my trajectory. But then I wouldn't have done Azúcar Amarga, I wouldn't have done The Cranks, or I would have had the same problem like the Eduardo Yañez and all those guys that went to Hollywood. And until now, some of them are, you know, but they had no career. So I was able to do a little bit of both, you know, like, you know, don't take the 405 is one of the advices I would give someone who moves to Hollywood. You know, hiring a publicist, maybe not estar jodiendo con las evitas, saliendo todas las noches y estar acabando en Los Ángeles because you were a novelty, Cubans were hot, and y eso era, you know, Ojani no, a todo el grupo, you know, we were los cubanitos de Miami en esa época que estábamos en Los Ángeles acabando. So you don't, you know, but I still have always been focused about my career. I've never had an issue where a producer said I've never showed up at a high or drunk at a set, or maybe high. But now that I'm old, but that professionally and my work and my craft, I love what I do. You know, acting for me is the paycheck. Looking for the work is the work. That's the hard work. Getting the gig, getting the this, doing the schmoozing, doing whatever you have to do to get there. The casting process, which is awful. Being on stage or being in front of a film camera, to me, that's bigger than the check. That's where I throw down and I enjoy and I love. So for me, I went that route because I started getting more into work, but really because almost 17 years ago, I had identical twin boys be born premature, which was the most terrifying experience I went through. They lived in a hospital for 2 months. I didn't know if they were going to make it or not. Every day was, you know, they're today dos jodedores, uno es un jiu-jitsu champion, wrestler, el otro es basquetbolista. They're in high school, of course, in South Broward, urban, no private school, nada. Ahí están con los morenitos.
No overtown.
Con los morenitos, el overtown de Broward, ahí lo tengo. Pero, you know, that, and then a few years ago, my wife got diagnosed with brain cancer. She's fine now. Like, she had her surgery. She's back, you know. But life takes you on a journey. And you know, some jobs or some things that I could have taken and movies I shot, you know, I got offered to go for months. I made a choice to stay with my boys, make sure that they were on the right path. And now I've kind of taken the in front of the camera. I've always been behind. I have a production company. There's a lot of things that are on the air that I've shot that you've probably seen, or that my little production company has shot, you know, on Telemundo and those novelas, as a producer and as a production company, and for films that they hire me to, they need to shut down a street. Oh, call Rene. He knows all the people. They'll shut it down. So I get hired by big. Unfortunately, I don't have those credits because it's a producer. It's a, you know, that kind of. But I've always kind of stayed in the industry, with the exception of some companies that I helped with their marketing and, you know, getting into the U.S. I spent sometimes producing Vegas shows as well. So I got all that good experience from Vegas. I was out there for 2 years of producing. That show that came from Cuba, the Havana Night Show, I ended up being a co-producer on that show in Vegas, and we called it Fuego, and we added more. All those, they were all came from Cuba, and they stayed here. They were never allowed to go back to Cuba. I was a producer on that show as well. So I went behind the camera more and enjoyed that aspect of creating as well. Like I'm doing here, I'm doing both.
So let's say somebody would come up to you with a good script for a movie or a good play. Would you be interested in maybe looking at it, reading it, or
course.
guiding to the right place?
That's what it's all about, collaborating and finding. I like I told you before. I think, and makes me extremely happy that this young generation and this young Cuban American generation is really gets it. The stuff they're coming up with is unique. It's very impactful. It takes the message and drives it in a different way. You don't have to scream it all the time. They have more subtle ways. So of course, that is something that I look for and collabing. Right after the show, I'm already creating. I created another show, and I'm getting ready to put it back up again. Another live immersive type show. So about the history of the margarita cocktail. So I'll give you a hint on that.
No, and it's good that you say that because like I was the other day we were talking with Madeline, and there's just a lot of very good Cuban stories of families that have gone through a lot, and part of history, just like you said, that they're rewriting it, that should be told. That should be either a mini series or a movie or on theater. Y tú sabes, la gente se va muriendo y esas historias se mueren con las personas. Y es una lástima porque de verdad que debemos de enseñarle al mundo todo lo que, the resilience of the Cuban people, of how they get through, like let's say for example, at 11 years old, coming from a boat, leaving everything, going through your hardships, overcoming that, now working with very famous people in Hollywood, doing your own thing with the products. I mean, those are very, very, very good stories, man, to tell.
Yeah, no, and I think our community is full of them, and on every side, not only in the arts, in music, in books, in business. I'm dabbling with creating a documentary about the history of the Cuban cigar and how it came out of Cuba and what it meant to areas like where you are right now and how it traveled up the state from Key West all the way to Tampa and all that. Mm-hmm. So I'm right now working with a couple of partners on putting something like that together, and I've gotten to see some documents. Recently I saw a copy. There's only two. One is in Cuba, and the other one I saw recently of the Cuban Constitution. And I was just like, I was just in awe. I was in awe of all the history and how intricate and how we contributed from way back then to the American experience as well.
Yep.
So these two countries were interconnected, and tobacco and Spain and Cuba and America was really the economy of the world at some point.
Yes, it was the sugar that Cuba produced. Cuba was one of the top producers of sugar. Que te iba a decir, hablando todo como los locos, mi amigo Rene, ven acá. So we've had a debate here a few times, like off camera and all, like, ¿hay salami en el sándwich cubano? No hay salami en el sándwich cubano.
Please, Rene, I want to like you, bro. Please give me the right answer.
No es salami. Es allí. Es chorizo.
No sé. The ham, the Swiss, pickle, the mustard, y el pork.
Y el pork. Alguna gente le ponen el choricito ese, pero salami jamás he visto.
Okay.
Y el choricito
I'll let you get away with choricito. Whatever that means, I'll let you get away with it.
Not. It's like a Cuban salami, like the yellow.
Gotcha.
But I'm not a fan. I like it the original way. Igual que the other day I was like, oye, que picadillo no lleva raisins. Y mi mamá me dijo, no, que picadillo sí lleva raisins. Y le digo, oye, que no. Bueno, el picadillo con las pasitas, no sé. Sí, ese es otro debate.
Okay, uvas pasas en un picadillo. Is that what you said?
Las pasitas en el picadillo.
No pasas en un picadillo.
Mi mamá dice que sí, pero yo digo
no. Ni en el arroz con leche either. I don't think so. I don't get the people that do that. Anyways, Rene, is there anything else that you would want to plug before we wrap up? I think we've had a great conversation, man. Once again, we thank you very much for your time. I know you're very busy.
No, guys,
I would like to give you the floor just to promote whatever you'd like to go ahead and promote.
No, I just want to thank you guys, you Cuban dudes, for keeping the message out, that the word, the way you talk, the way you represent us, like that makes me as a Cuban American now proud, so I just want to thank you guys for the work that you're doing. and for taking our stories out there and just saying them how we say them, sin editar, sin como las hablamos. Y nada, invitarlos a que vengan al show, a toda la gente que los ven a ustedes. So come see us at Suite 15, que Quinceañera. We're at the Renaissance, at the Gables. Ahí se quita Coral Gables. Bueno, es en the Gables, pero Coral Gables adjacent.
A Miami, más a Miami que creo que...
si das una dobladita más, anyway, and we'll be there for the entire month of April. We're doing 4 shows a week from Thursday through Sunday. And just come have a quinceañera with us and have fun and enjoy and celebrating our culture a little bit, because this is a truly Cuban quinceañera.
We would love that.
Awesome. Let's give a round of applause to Rene. Thank you, Rene, so much for your time once again, sir. I hope the show is a mega hit. I hope it gets rave reviews, and I hope that there is a second phase to the Rene Lavan career.
There you go. For sure there is. Awesome. It's on the works. Y voy a tener que salir corriendo porque me van a botar del micrófono. Voy a tener que botar yo mismo del ensayo.
Te agradezco.
Rene, thank you so much, man. I'll follow up with you after this during the week, and I promise to put the promo out and I'll cut up this interview in a way where it makes sense and kind of remove some of these drops.
If you need another actor, aquí estoy.
Oye, te estoy mirando ahí para un papel que tengo.
Dale, tira
and the Able Brothers, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you, Rene. Thank you so much, Rene Lavan, everyone.